Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. We are here to present the findings of the East Roswell Economic Action Committee, and we had a work session on this with City Council, and I believe that you all will really enjoy this presentation. This group has done a lot of hard work, and they have a lot of good recommendations. They took a deep dive into old studies, things that were still relevant, and also they came up with recommendations to moving forward. So before I introduce them, I would first like to introduce the council. Everyone on council is here. Councilmember Matt Judy, please stand up. Councilmember Matt Tizer, Councilmember Marie Wilsey, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Marcelo Zapata, and Councilmember Mike Palermo. And I would like to thank them all. Without council's approval, we would have never been able to pull this off. And I will get into a little bit more later, but without these members of this East Roswell Economic Action Committee, we would never have seen these wonderful results. They have surpassed everything that I expected, and I did expect a lot. So I would like to let you all know, we've got, after the presentation, you can come up to the microphone and make comments. We've got a card if you would like to speak in public, so please pick one of these up. Then for those of you that are shy, please share your comments with us in writing, and you can either present those to Tyra, who's in the back of the room. Tyra, wave your hand. Tyra will collect these, but then also if you want to take these home and then comment, please feel free to do them and do that and return that to my office. And then also, I would like you all to know, we didn't want to cut down a forest of trees, but the downloaded report and other documents presented tonight are on this link, and we will put that up on the overhead. So welcome, and thank you very much for being here this evening. And now I would like to turn this over to the chairman of the East Roswell Economic Action Committee, Mr. Trent Perry.
Thank you. I want to first of all thank Mayor and all the members of council for the opportunity that they've afforded us as citizens and business owners and managers of the East Side. In the 33 years I've lived on the East Side in Willow Springs, I don't think we've ever been asked to do this, so that I can remember. So this is a bold, I think, act of leadership on the part of our governing body that's asking us what we think and what we recommend they do without any strings attached. And so I've never been asked that before by a government organization. So it's been a great experience. I have to credit the members of the committee, two of which are here tonight. Now I have to apologize, the schedule didn't fit into everyone's schedule. It's school nights. It's the only person I really envy right now for all the things that they have to do is one of our members is in Jamaica at a wedding. So it's compared to this weather, it's a fantastic place to be. But anyway, my committee members have put enormous hours into this process, and I want to thank them. We have two here tonight, Ron Buckley and Bruce Kellogg, who are going to be presenting parts of the presentation tonight. But all the rest of them, even though they're not here and they're engaged in other types of things that were conflicted with this time frame, I ask all of them for thanks that all the work that they've done. So we didn't do this alone. There was just a lot of work involved. The committee, as you may or may not have read in our bylaws or the information that documenting the creation of this committee, it was essentially formed to simply study the East Side however we felt was necessary based on any type of data that we thought was necessary and come up with recommendations, whatever recommendations we want. And the report that we're going to go over tonight is essentially 15 pages, not long, a lot of stuff in there, but of what we think the situation is in certain areas, and also what we think needs to be done within East Roswell. It's significant. We did not consider price. I've had some comments that it's expensive to do what we've asked to be done, and I understand that. But we've gone back 15, 16 years into East Roswell's history. We've gone through all of the studies. And could you pull up page 14, please? Which is attached, 15, I'm sorry. Page 15, attachment 1. Page 15, attachment 1. What that, oh, this is kind of dark here. I can see with my glasses on. This represents the body of work that we, almost all of us, read all of it. And it represents a lot of studies and information that has been put together on economic development topics, not only for the city of Roswell, but also a lot of it pertained directly and indirectly to the east side of Roswell. And so certain parts of these attachment 1 items are of more importance to us than the others as we went through them. The 2005 Holcomb Bridge Road East Revitalization Study was a significant study. It was done not too long after the city, or the east side of Roswell, was annexed by the city of Roswell from Fulton County, and it uncovered a tremendous amount of problems and put forth a number of recommendations which were kind of shelved, in my opinion. I don't know for sure, and I didn't delve into that, but some of the information or recommendation there were acted on, but most of them were not. So we spent a lot of time going into this study and using, oh, you can't hear me? I'm usually, and we used a lot of the information here to legitimize the recommendations we've made. The 2 studies, Strategic Economic Development Plan 2012 and 2017, were also significant studies that outline our present economic development infrastructure. And so it also had a lot of statistics in there that we used significantly in terms of our findings. The comprehensive plan, which I encourage all of you to get involved in as it's being revised, I think, beginning in March of this year. It establishes city priorities and actionable items. And we need more on that on the east side. Anyway, that was considered by us in terms of formatting our presentation. The vision survey of 2017 was a significant survey of east side residents that was unbelievable reading. It was not condensed into an actionable format. So what we did is we took 1,400 responses from citizens on the east side based on their vision of East Holcomb Bridge Road. Some of it was not pleasant. Some of it was done at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in terms of the comments. It was definitely interesting reading. But what we did is we formulated a lot of frustration in those comments too, but a lot of great ideas. It's unbelievable what you can get out of residents when you simply ask for it and then you spend the time to go over it and kind of condense it and understand what they're really saying. There were some great ideas. Some of those ideas in terms of what we should have on the east side, the improvements are in our recommendations because they make a lot of sense and there were a lot of people involved in saying the same thing in different ways. And next site studies also is a very important study which Ron Buckley will present some findings on. It documents where we live and where we shop and where we buy goods and services. Incredible to understand how much business we're losing. So basically, that's the beginning of our process, our introduction. The city support staff was incredible. Administration, Roswell Inc., RKG Consultants, who did a lot of the strategic plan documents in 2012 and 2017. Tremendous resource. Transportation helped us on the Big Creek Parkway area, but was not, because of all kinds of conflicts, able to contribute a lot more to our community. And community relations, we had hoped to go outside with a lot of public outreach information requests. but we just didn't have, the staff resources weren't available in the time frame that we wanted to do it. So our work plan was about an 8 to 9 month work plan involving regular meetings and small meetings aside from the regular meetings, which were committee meetings, subcommittee meetings. Okay, let's begin. The study is developed or organized into 4 major components: economic planning and development, transportation, character areas, and community facilities, which somewhat parallels our comprehensive strategic plan for the city of Roswell. Beginning with economic planning and development. One of the things that became so obvious to us, well, first of all, when you read the Strategic Economic Development Plan of 2012, in the beginning few pages of that plan, it makes a kind of a bold statement in terms of city economic development. It says basically you're either growing or you're declining, either or. Based on all the work we've done, I believe, and we believe, the East Side is declining and has been in decline for a while. And I think we all know that. We see it in many ways every day. We've seen stores fail. We feel it, we see it, and so forth. So I'm going to just put it on the table. I think that's a significant problem with the East Side. There's a lot of contributing factors to that. One of the reasons is that we have not been successful as a city, and you can ask questions later as we have the question and answer period. I'm going to move through this as quickly as possible because it's a fairly long presentation and I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Basically, in terms of the city itself, and especially the East Side, we have not been very successful in attracting larger corporations. In a lot of other areas in our North Fulton area, our neighbors have been successful in attracting large corporations that employ thousands of people in some cases and have a lot of higher income jobs. Roswell has not been real successful at attracting the larger corporations. For example, and many of us may not realize this, although generally I think we understand it, the city of Roswell has a total of about 5,500 business organizations. 92% employ less than 20 people. 6% employ less than 50 people, and 2% employ more than 50. That's significant when it comes to the economic vitality of our city and the East Side. On the East Side, we only have, out of those 5,500 businesses, 1,600. 1,600. Out of all 5,500, 35% are home-based businesses. Small enterprises run out of someone's home. No offices, no place for lunches and during the daytime, very small businesses. Also, the problem we have in the city is our labor force. It's extremely strong. 60% of our adult workers have at least a 4-year college degree. Because we lack a lot of larger corporations, we don't have the kind of jobs generally that those types of people need. So we have approximately 41,000 residents, based on some of the estimates of these studies, 41,000 residents that leave the city every day to go to work in other parts of North Fulton County. Anybody commute outside of Roswell? The rest are out that are probably still in traffic, and I'm kidding. It's a bad night out there, I know. But trying to get home, as many of you know, is trying to get home after work, whether it's in the perimeter or Alpharetta or the city of Atlanta, where most of our people work, among other areas like Duluth and so forth. It's hard to get home in a reasonable time and have supper and then attend some meetings and so forth outside of that. So I understand that. I used to commute to the perimeter for 25 years in my office location down there. It's a bear. I'm a veteran of Holcomb Bridge and 400. So as many of you are too, I know. So that's a problem in that we don't have a lot of jobs for the higher income types of people that reside here. We have everything going. You know, we've heard the concept live, work, play. Live, work, and play where you live and so forth. We don't have the work as much as we probably need to. We have the live and the play, tremendous parks and recreation, all kinds of things going for us, the river, but we need to attract more larger corporations who can employ the kinds of workforce that we have, the professional and managerial workforce. So we're going to talk a little bit today or tonight about the need to revitalize a lot of our economic development programs, specifically trying to attract larger companies using high-quality office space in areas that we probably should have it, but we don't. And then all this is wishful thinking. I understand there's a lot of work to be done to get to where we're saying we need to be, but we need to attract, in whatever way we can, as a team effort of economic development, as many larger employers as we can, to bring some of that workforce back on a day-to-day basis. Also, one of the greatest assets that we have in regard to attracting larger businesses and high-end offices, one of the greatest assets that we have not developed very, very well at all is the quadrant or the interchange of Holcomb Bridge, 400, and Old Alabama. And we're saying it how the studies say it. That for years, for 15 years and more, that area has been identified, and many residents in the surveys that I mentioned earlier, many residents feel that we are underutilizing the tremendous value that that area could provide to our local economy. The office buildings that could be there, the businesses that could, thrive there, the upscale retail, all kinds of different venues of business activity that could benefit from that area. If you take a look at, and many of you have, I know, if you take a look at our 400 exit for Holcomb Bridge and you compare it to a lot of other exits on Holcomb Bridge, or 400 I mean, we're not very well developed there. And I'm laying it on the table because that's what the committee has seen. And we need to take a hard look at what we're doing there in terms of creating actionable redevelopment strategies to help bring more economic activity to the east side. That is probably one of the greatest economic potential areas, or areas with economic potential in the entire city. And it has been reported that way for decades. So it's important, and we're recommending that we do something about that right now. Exactly what, when, and how, I can't answer that, but we have to sit down and establish some priorities around that. It's also pointed out in the studies that we've gone through that there is a significant disparity between the economic growth and prosperity, so to speak, between the east side and the west side. And I'm not pointing out why, I'm just saying it's a reality. 1,600 businesses on the east side, the balance of 5,500 on the west side. So the numbers speak for themselves, and as we look at the corridor, Holcomb Bridge corridor, we know that not everything is going as well as it probably should be. In terms of recommendations for this first segment, the priorities are Holcomb Bridge, 400 Old Alabama, and we'll get into this in a few minutes. Transportation infrastructure and character nodes, which is where we live and how we live and the values that we have built into the areas around Roswell, East Roswell. We need to be more proactive in helping our small businesses, all businesses, not just large businesses, but the smaller businesses that sometimes struggle based on economic upturns and downturns, based on all kinds of variables. We have a lot of small businesses and we read about failures off and on over the time, but we need to help them in some proactive way, given city resources or contractors. Merchant associations, workshops, trade groups, shows. I know we're doing some of that on a small scale. I think we need to do it in a much more significant fashion to help some of these businesses. Sometimes I've talked to several business owners on the east side. I've lived here for 33 years, so I've had ample opportunity to listen. Sometimes they say we don't hear anything from the city except when they want the tax money or the business licenses. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying we need to reach out and help some of these small businesses, and maybe it's bringing other resources to help them. I don't know. We also, again, are losing significant amount of businesses, which I'm going to have Ron present in a few minutes, some of the statistics that show you actually where our people live and where they spend their money. It's a lot of lost opportunity. So I'm going to finish a couple more points, and then I'm going to ask Ron to come up and present that finding. The funding mechanisms I mentioned earlier, there's a big gasp when people read this and say, we can't afford this. I understand that. Again, we weren't given a price. So it is what it is. But some of the suggestions we would make, and again, we're not funding experts, we're citizens, is consider community improvement districts, tax allocation districts, using the Downtown Development Authority more effectively, special bonding options, and the Georgia Department of Transportation. When you look at the traffic volume on, let's just use East Holcomb Bridge Road. East Holcomb Bridge Road carries 45,000 vehicles per day. That's about 13 million trips a year, times decade after decade of having had no significant improvements in that east side corridor and all the gasoline tax money that's made on that. It would seem to me that Georgia Department of Transportation may owe us some payback, and that may be idealistic, but it seems to me that we're going to outline a lot of improvements that we think are necessary to the East Holcomb Bridge Road. When we hear all that and start counting the dollars, maybe we need to be really aggressive with GDOT on that issue. Also, we're asking, because we have so many great attractions on the east side, our parks, the river. We have more access to the river on the east side in many cases than any place else. So we're asking, and we don't know a lot about this program, but that 40% of the annual hotel-motel tax revenues that are received off of the 5 hotel-motels that we have east of Warsaw Road, which is our district or our area, that we make sure some of that's dedicated to promoting the east side. Our parks, the river, various attractions in the best way possible. Maybe our businesses, maybe having some events that are promoted on the east side, car shows or flea markets or whatever. We'd like to have that money, some of that money spent and dedicated to the east side. Mixed-use zoning, been talked about a long time. We need more office space and less apartments, and I'll get into apartments later. We understand that, and we're recommending that zoning be carefully evaluated to provide for more office, no apartments on the first floor, and those types of things. Also, as we evolve and hopefully redevelop the east side, we're asking that we not rely as much on surface parking, sprawling surface parking lots, that we can condense more economic development by creating parking garages as we redevelop some of these areas. We're talking about that in areas like the Canton Street and other parts of the city. Some of the most parking lots I've seen in Roswell are at car dealerships. They build a lot of them. So, but anyway, I think we need to look at that in our development strategies. Also, and last but not least, before Ron comes in and helps us with some of the details of where we're losing business and where people are working versus where they live, is shared office spaces. With so many home-based businesses, 35%, almost 2,000 of the 5,500 businesses in our town, our city, are home-based. They may very well need a shared office facility, a new concept of office space where they can rent a certain spot or just share that office space. We'd like to see that built into some of our development plans because we think it has a tremendous marketplace in the east side. So before I go into the transportation area, which all of you will relate to very much, let's ask Ron Buckley to present some statistics on the areas our people live and where they shop, okay, and what they shop for.
Thank you, Trent. Oh, thank you. And I want to personally thank Trent Perry because he lives in East Roswell, and you can tell, this is a volunteer position, and he has worked tirelessly on this 15-page report, putting everything together. So thank you very much. He'll be back. My name is Ron Buckley. I'm the vice chairman of the committee. Up here is last fall we'd have monthly meetings, and we would get information and kind of sort it all together and kind of go out and figure out how we can present and make information out of this. And this report was done by a company called Next Site, and the city of Roswell hires them for several years, and we sat in a presentation in the fall, and they do it for other municipalities also. They're kind of an information, trends, demographics. And when we sat in there, they did it for the whole city of Roswell. We said, could you do something just for East Roswell? Could you, at no charge, of course, we asked them. So we said, could you kind of do a deeper dive, do the nodes, kind of figure out what's going on, and they can come back and tell us what, they recommend and what they see. The next slide here is basically, this is done by, they got information from all different sources. And this is at the bottom, it says Synergios Technologies. And probably the biggest thing that would look here, if you look at the East Roswell side, this is from Q1 17 to Q1 19. So over the last 2 years, East Roswell really hasn't grown that much. It's a lot less growth than the west side of Roswell, where it's been 0.38 population, household growth of only 0.47 because of the limitations of the housing and the growth. But the interesting thing is the average home value went up from 474 to 567. So it went up actually at about the same pace or even higher at 19% for the last 2 years, which I think is a really good trend. So what they do is they've kind of took the different nodes of Roswell, and let me kind of follow along with my notes here too. Basically, this is Holcomb Bridge Road in Old Alabama. Basically talked about the number of cars, the number of travelers, where people come from and where they're going. This next slide is interesting because it basically shows, the one on the left says the home location. So anybody who goes to the intersection of Holcomb Bridge Road in Old Alabama, this is where they live. It's the heat map right there in the red. So basically they live in that whole, mostly to the east is where they're coming by that intersection. And the one on the right is where they work. So anyone who goes to this intersection is basically working downtown, Buckhead, perimeter, and east, north, or east of the site. So it kind of shows you where they're traveling from. And this is done by a company called, on the bottom, you'll see Placer right there. And that's a company that tracks your cell phones. So it knows where you're going from, where you're going to. And that's different information sort of the Next Site would do. The next one is interesting because it tracks where people are shopping. So like the top left one is in apparel favorite places. And there's a theme here. A lot of people go to Macy's. It seems to be at North Point is a very popular shopping destination, and at Dunwoody. On the right side, favorite dining places on the east of the intersection. This is Holcomb Bridge Road in Old Alabama. Perimeter Mall is a very popular area. Chick-fil-A seems to come up a lot. That's the number one dining area in the area, so that's something. We need another Chick-fil-A. But the bottom one is kind of interesting because on the east side of the intersection, the number one grocery store where people go to is actually Buford Farmers Market, the highway, Buford Highway Farmers Market, which is really interesting that they track people that live there east of the intersection. That's the number one grocery store. So they're going a far distance to shop. And so maybe, we need a farmer's market in East Roswell, maybe. So people are going to it. So there's a need there. So I thought that was a very interesting study. This is at the Kroger, this is right here at Eves, that 80% of the visitors live within 2 miles of here. So they know that people that go to Kroger, they live within 2 miles of this intersection. So they don't travel a great distance, they don't go other places, so it's pretty much getting people from this neighborhood. So this is a heat map again of where people are coming from, where they're working. Similar, so the one on the left would be where people are living and come to this intersection, and the one would be where they're working. So there'd be a similar, similar kind of heat map, kind of where they're coming from and going to. The next one on the left is shows the favorite apparel places, and everybody on each quadrant has Macy's at North Point as the #1 retail destination for apparel. On the right would be the grocery stores, and again, the Buford Highway Farmers Market comes up as one location. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Well, it's just the demographics. It's just the and on the bottom left, the favorite dining halls is, just shows you like where people go. The North Point Mall is very popular. This is the next node would be the Holcomb Bridge Road. This would be where the former Target was. Basically shows the same kind of where people are living and where people are working. And this is all on the website too. City of Roswell, you could just go to East Roswell. It's all go there. You could click on this report. Similar type drive times. And it has the favorite places, basically of, kind of shows all 4 nodes of East Roswell, where people go the most. Being home improvements would be IKEA, Home Goods, Home Depot. Leisure would be Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlantic Station. Shopping would be Avalon, North Point Market Center, and the superstores that people go to from all 4 of these nodes. And then it's got unique characteristics of each node. Basically, Holcomb Bridge in Old Alabama, where people go to the most. This is the top in all categories, dining, retail. Would go to Centennial Park, Georgia Aquarium, Piedmont Park, Holcomb Bridge Road and Eves Road, the different locations that they go to. The Holcomb Bridge Road, and then Nesbitt Ferry intersection, people are actually going to Stone Mountain Park also. They'll kind of continue east and southeast. And that's kind of the summary that they did. So this is a kind of a more specialized, nodes on East Roswell. And that's all I got right now, Trent. Thanks.
Now let's talk transportation. According to the 2017 survey of residents, guess what the #1 problem is? Transportation. Holcomb Bridge Road, and some of you already know this, maybe you don't, some of you don't. On the west side of 400, Holcomb Bridge Road experiences 75,000 vehicle trips per day. On the east side, 45,000 vehicle trips per day. As I mentioned earlier, that's about 13 million a year. On 400 Holcomb Bridge interchange, about 75,000 on and off transactions per vehicle per day. That's a lot of volume. The good thing is that the city and the Georgia Department of Transportation, and this has been a significant deterrent to our economic development. We can barely keep up as it is. You know, all of you can attest to that every morning and every afternoon. But the good thing is the city and Georgia DOT has negotiated some significant improvements in terms of the interchange at 400 and Holcomb Bridge, 2 new crossover bridges across 400 to the north of Holcomb Bridge and to the south, the Big Creek Parkway modification project, and I understand that sometime in the future, a MARTA station is going to be located in the southeast quadrant of 400 in Holcomb Bridge. That is a significant upgrade over the next several years in terms of capacity and ability to handle some of the traffic that we've been dealing with as major problems for decades. There haven't been many changes to Holcomb Bridge 400 since I've lived here, since 1987. And so this is a tremendous foundation for us to build on. And most people don't realize it, but that number of cars per day, the transactions, the interacting between that interchange and back and forth in our city represents our major gateway to our region. It is the gateway to North Fulton County and the metro area of Atlanta for the city of Roswell. We have other areas where we enter and leave the city, but I doubt there's anything significant as this. So it's important that this area is getting the upgrade that it's getting, and I'm sure, I don't know all the details, but I'm sure it's taken years to get this transaction done. So that's a positive. The way we look at it on the committee, okay, now let's redevelop the area. Let's create more business opportunities in this area now that we're also in line to create more transportation capacity. So that's the way we view it, and that solves a major problem. We've made some progress, and maybe we can do something with this interchange. However, east of Old Alabama, nothing's changed to any extent. And I, again, personally, I haven't seen much change. Now, we have done the city's done a lot of upgrades and turn lanes and aesthetics and all kinds of things west of Old Alabama, but east of Old Alabama, we're very needy. And so the traffic is increasing exponentially, not only in terms of our residents commuting outside the city or other people coming through and commuting through our east side to other areas. There's a lot of pass-through traffic. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of employment growth east of the river, and so there's a lot of people coming through. So the transportation issue for Roswell on the east side is the #1 most significant problem viewed by residents. According to the Vision Survey, which I told you is the residential survey that we took, or the city took in 2017, let me share some phrases out of that survey. Quote, first of all, it said that Holcomb Bridge traffic is #1 problem. It's a road you take to someplace else. I'm serious. That's not the only time it was mentioned. Suburban blight. Detracts from pristine neighborhoods. Limits shopping appeal. Hard to keep good businesses. This all was reinforced in the 2005 study, which I use in our attachment 1. These were topics that were raised specifically, and more than these, in the 2005 study. So this has been a legacy of problems with Holcomb Bridge. It's not considered by a lot of you areas that you prefer to shop for significant items at. You do a lot of convenience shopping, which I think Ron has pointed out, a lot of convenience shopping, but not the heavy stuff. And so that's part of the reason, potentially, that a number of businesses struggle and have struggled over the years. Because when you take a look at the gorgeous subdivisions that we live in, the east side is so rich with subdivisions that were built back in the 70s and 80s and some newer. And then you take a look at some of the shopping environments or aesthetics that we deal with. I'm not putting fault on merchants or anybody else. I'm just saying that the corridor needs improvement. And we're going to make some suggestions on that. Pedestrian issues. are, I've watched bicyclists try to navigate old Alabama road. They go up one side, they cross another, in crosswalks, they go up another side. It takes them forever, and it's risky because even though there's bike lanes, sometimes we don't maintain them as much as we should. When you get a lot of debris next to the curb and it's in a bike lane, what are you going to do? You're going to go around it. And so it has to be considered. I don't know what the accident rates are, but in this article from the Wall Street Journal on the 27th of February, Georgia is ranked in the top 5 in terms of traffic fatalities and accidents for pedestrians and bicyclists. Top 5 nationwide. I don't know what our city's numbers are, and I'm not asking for them, but I'm saying I see unsafe crosswalks, not marked well, and I see bike lanes that are hazardous, in my opinion. Signage. We have poor signage on the east side, and I'll get into some details of that. But if anyone takes exit 7 off of 400, there's only one of 3 exits. You have 7A, 7B, and 7. Anybody tell me which exit has the word Roswell in it? 7, coming southbound. The rest of them don't mention Roswell. And to me, that's important because almost 40,000 of our residents live on the east side. It tells you that's the way to go to Peachtree Corners. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think that signage is important. There's no signage that directs us to our parks to a great extent, or our library, or there's limited signage that boasts some of the assets that we have when you want to turn and find something, or you go to the river. You know, the best access to the river is really old Alabama. You take that, zip right down to the river, and you can run. I take my grandson down there all the time. Of the whole city, that's one of the best accesses because it's quick and easy. Anyway, so what we're suggesting are a lot of upgrades in the area of transportation. And I don't know what the cost is, like I said earlier, but I think the studies say it's needed. We need to create what is called a Parkway Village scale for the East Holcomb Bridge corridor. Have anybody driven to the west side, Crossville, Woodstock? That's basically a Parkway Village scale. From horse fences to greens to landscaping. Now that was built later than the east side. But we feel that there's some real viability in redeveloping that corridor to make it look similar to the west side by using the rights-of-ways that exist along Holcomb Bridge Road. We're talking about streetscaping. We're talking about sidewalks. When I first moved to Georgia in 1987, I couldn't help but notice the dirt paths along the road. I said, what in the world's going on? Anyway, they're still there. So we need, in our committee's opinion, we need sidewalks on the north side and the south side of Holcomb Bridge Road, east to west. We would like multimodal 8-foot pathway on the north side all the way to Nesbitt Ferry. We have to just make it done. We need normal sidewalks on the south side and hopefully all the way to the river or the wastewater treatment plant. We need sidewalks on Fouts Road. You may not have noticed it, but there's no sidewalk that connects Holcomb Bridge all the way to the park. We need that. And through the park and to Eves Road. We're recommending that too, because it's just lifestyle. We want landscaping and shrubbery. We don't want it to look like a desert. We want it green, and we want, like the west side, it's well kept. Trees. We've got a lot of trees, but they're all off to the side. Maybe the horse fences. I don't know, that might be difficult in the amount of area, but everybody likes the horse fences. Some of our resident surveys said we like the west side better than the east side in terms of aesthetics. So again, we're listing everything. Streetlights. Yeah, right. No streetlights. We need streetlights. We need them all the way down Holcomb Bridge Road. And they need to be matched. They don't have to be right next to each other because there's not heavy pedestrian traffic in some areas, but some of the people complain they can't see at night sometimes. Like tonight's probably a real rough night driving down Holcomb Bridge Road. Be careful going home. But streetlights are basic. And I know that's expensive, but it is what it is. Landscape medians, crosswalks, boldly marked crosswalks that hopefully will improve safety for pedestrians. There's a lot of people moving back and forth, but crossing Holcomb Bridge Road, anybody do it lately? No, we don't. It's not something you really try to do unless you have to. But we have a solution for that in a minute. So we need boldly marked crosswalks at the very least. We would like pedestrian bridges, 2 of them. One in the area crossing Holcomb Bridge Road at Old Alabama or Holcomb Woods area, and one at Eves Road area. It makes sense. In fact, the Eves Road was recommended back in 2005. So it makes sense. When you've got an area, particularly around the Eves Road, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, where there's schools and libraries and all these other things that are going on, crossing Holcomb Bridge is a reality. And I think it's important to have that capability. Trails maps. We need a trail map system. I know the transportation department's working on that, and I'm probably getting windy here. But we need a trail map for the east side. There was an original trail map recommended in the 2005 study. Some of that's been done. We need a system of trails and bike routes in the east side to bring it together. The parks, we've got 3 beautiful parks, and to connect those with trails would be wonderful. We need better signage in all areas, enforce the codes for signing, sidewalks at the Big Creek area of Old Alabama. A lot of people would like to see the bridge on Riverside next to Route 9 replaced. It was built in 1958 when the population of Roswell was 3,500 people. It's difficult to navigate if you want to turn to, it looks, I don't know if it's safe or not, but it looks like it would improve traffic flow. And sidewalks from Dogwood to Riverside. That's transportation. Character areas. And I'll try to move along. There's 3 geographic areas on the east side. Holcomb Bridge 400 Old Alabama, major commercial node. Holcomb Bridge corridor east of the river, and large planned subdivisions, subdivision neighborhoods. Many of these subdivisions were built a long time ago, and they are first rate. I don't know if Ron showed you the pricing, but some of the homes on the east side are average sale prices higher than the west side in some cases. But anyway, roughly 70% of the land area on the east side, maybe a little less, is made up with suburban residential of home subdivisions. That's a lifestyle that basically founded the east side of Roswell while it was North Fulton County, not Roswell. A lot of residents, and I'll raise this, I know it's a controversial issue, but the residents have put it in the survey, and it keeps coming back and back and back. That lifestyle, those large subdivisions, the pristine subdivisions with the clubs and the amenities in the subdivisions are what people's used to accepting. But the problem that a lot of people have now is that we're infilling around that with an awful lot of apartments. A lot. And that is a problem from the residents' perspective. Presently, when the target property is finished, we will have 9,000 renter-occupied apartments just in the east side. We have 8,200 owner-occupied single-family homes. So we have got to look at that issue. We agree with the city's moratorium on apartments, but we have to bring that into balance because it concerns people. A lot of other areas, like for example, I'll use our neighbor to the north. They have a limit in terms of renter-occupied housing, I think about 38% for the whole city. And I'm not suggesting that's what we need to do. I'm just saying renter-occupied versus owner-occupied, there's a difference. We all have rented at some time in our life. We know how valuable that is, especially for young families and older people like myself who don't want the upkeep of a home. I understand that. But we have to look at that carefully in terms of lifestyle and character of our neighborhood. In terms of the activity or the economic components of the east side, we have 3 nodes. The Holcomb Bridge 400 Old Alabama, Centennial, right around the Centennial area, where we're at right now, and Holcomb Bridge Nesbitt Ferry. Those are the 3 areas that we have to focus economic development activity at. And I'm going to move through faster. The 400 Old Alabama area, as I mentioned earlier, is a significant potential of economic growth for our economy. A lot of recommendations have been made for that. The residents had some tremendous ideas, and let me just generalize some of them. They feel that that area would be something like a Canton Street, with Class A offices added, Class B offices, high-end retail, performing arts centers, a corporate campus. We already have a corporate campus in Kimberly-Clark, a great neighbor, been here as long as I've been here. And so we believe that that area, again, like I said earlier, needs to be developed. That's a major economic hub of the east side and potentially for the city. The Centennial Node is referred to as a community and institutional center of East Roswell. This is a premier area right now for us. Mixed housing, Fulton Schools, Park, river access, tremendous lifestyle center. And we're going to talk a few minutes later about some proposals along those lines that are conceptual without necessarily a feasibility study, but it sounds good. Nesbitt Ferry, Holcomb Bridge is a node that we're also interested in, but it has the northeast corner of that is already in Johns Creek, so we only got 3/4 of that intersection. But it has some development potential according to the studies in terms of elderly housing and a lot of other areas that make sense. And let me just go through some of these and make sure we've got some of the pieces. I see people looking at their watches, so I'm sensitive to that. I could talk forever. So, again, like I said earlier, there's a lot of upgrades coming with Holcomb Bridge 400 Old Alabama. A lot of residents would like to see a Canton Street times 10 or 15 here in terms of the Holcomb Bridge 400 area. The Centennial Node, again, community center, a lot of community activities. There's a lot of development that could fit in this area very, very well, and the committee has been concerned about what happens with the coal site. We're not up to date on what's going on with it, but it is a sensitive issue to all of you, I know, and that coupled with the apartment complexes and everything we've been through in the last couple of years, we understand that, and there's a recommendation that may or may not be viable that Bruce is going to represent a few minutes from now, and as soon as I finish this one section, and then we'll go into the next area. So, again, elderly housing, maybe medical practices on the Holcomb Bridge, the Nesbitt Ferry Holcomb Bridge, and that pretty much covers that portion. So if I can, let me introduce Bruce Kellogg, and I'll ask him to cover a conceptual presentation for a Roswell Activity Center that's being recommended for consideration by council and mayor by the committee. And it has not been vetted in terms of economic feasibility, but it's very popular so far in terms of what it can bring to this particular area.
No, he's going to do it for me. Welcome to Centennial Node. We are here sitting where I'm going to be talking about. And I also want to recognize our 3 members who are not here. Amanda Reapy, Andy McGarry and Tim Stevens, and they are the ones that put this together. I'm filling in for them while they're having a good time somewhere, I'm not sure. But it is my honor to do so, and I live in this node, of course. We believe that this has the possibility of being a major destination within the East Roswell corridor with an abundance of new opportunities for new development. We already talked about transportation, and I know, fortunately, I don't work in town anymore, but I do know every once in a while I have to get up really, really early to get someplace decent time in the morning. And if I don't leave by a certain time, I'm dead. I'm just sitting there. So we talked about that. It is a big issue for us here in Centennial Node. We are about 2 miles east of Georgia 400, and it has an existing abundance of strength for destinations. For example, public library, post office, schools, walkable areas, trails, and where we are right now, East Roswell Park. It has also been mentioned before that there have been studies, the 2005, the 2012, the 2017 studies, and based on what we have learned, they're still, to a great extent, relevant to what we're trying to do, not only in the Centennial Node, but overall. What we believe is needed today is shopability, including food, markets, boutique shops, commercial offices, as has been mentioned before, and mixed-use developments given the CX zoning. Our thoughts consider improving the area's aesthetics, such as landscaping, and again, that was discussed before, along Holcomb Bridge Road, streetscapes, holiday decor. Amanda Reapy indicated to us that we didn't have any decorations during the holidays up on the street lamps or anything like that, and that's assuming that there were street lamps. A few months ago, I don't know right now how long ago it was, but we took a bus tour. Steve Stroud gave us an opportunity to do a bus tour with him and other staff, and we got to see the west side with the fencing, the white fencing, and we all came to the conclusion that that is pretty cool. We like that. That would be really nice, consistent, very pretty, and it really does add a lot of value to the properties. And as has been mentioned, sidewalks are really important for pedestrian use. It also has been mentioned that coal site. We believe there's a 90-day moratorium on it, and there's a need for redevelopment. I've heard different ideas coming from different places as to what might be developed, so I'm with you. I'm holding my breath, hoping that something really good for new development comes into that. And whatever the needs will be, they should be and will be recognized by the city of Roswell. And mentioning Steve Stroud, who's also not able to join us tonight, he recently was a panelist on a BizNow, at a BizNow presentation. If you're not familiar with BizNow, it's a great real estate organization that does newsletters nationwide, including here, of course, and they have presentations where Steve was the panelist representing the North Fulton area, and of course, he was representing specifically Roswell, to discuss and encourage the local cities to improve their attraction to its citizens throughout North Fulton. So that was a great opportunity for public relations for Roswell, and I shared that with him. I've gone to these BizNow meetings for several years now. I've been very involved with them. Also, the construction of a bridge was mentioned, Holcomb Bridge and Eves Road. a very attractive looking bridge that will help people, pedestrians and bicyclists cross more efficiently, have better access to the river. And there might be, as was mentioned, there might be other opportunities for bridges in this node. And these should be added to the Roswell City's activity project. And then probably the most exciting thing that came out of this node's report was a CID, otherwise known as a community improvement district, to replicate, and this came from Amanda, to replicate a project that she's familiar with in suburban Colorado. It would be good for birthday parties, swimming, batting cages, playgrounds, music and art, theaters, synthetic fields, indoor tennis, pickleball courts. This would be a very powerful activity node, and it would be an opportunity to bring our families together and host functions. The intent is to make it self-sustainable through the creation of fees, and this would serve as an investment for our community, for funding and economic feasibility. They need to be studied. The economic feasibility needs to be studied. This would connect with East Roswell Park, where we are right here, theoretically, if this is the best location, and it seems that it might be. And this also needs to be investigated fully to see if something like this could be the quintessential destination for the Centennial Node. It would be a unique and bold concept. And that concludes the report that we had for the Centennial Node. I'll turn it back over to Fred.
We'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes. One more topic, community facilities, and that's our parks and so forth. We have a great park system. We just have a couple of recommendations with regard to our community facilities on the east side. The Parks and Recreation organization has a standard of 9 acres per 1,000 residents, and with approximately 40,000 residents, we are simply questioning whether we meet that standard on the east side with 3 parks. So it's a valid question. I don't know if we do or don't, but the more we can get, the better off we are, we figure. We requested better signage for transportation. From transportation, we would ask that the Parks and Recreation group partner with them to make sure that our parks are represented as well as possible in terms of signage. I think it would be a lot of value to increase more use on our parks. The east side is so rich with natural resources. I think that not only should our parks have good signage, but the river, when you exit off of 400 or you cross 400 on Holcomb Bridge and you come to the east side, you should be able to know right away which way to go to the river on Old Alabama, and so forth, and Eves Road. We have such accessibility. Big Creek Park, we have so many resources at Big Creek Park. My grandson wears me out on the bike trail, but I walk. And it's just a gorgeous place to be, but there's no real signage to bring visitors to it, and we think that's very important. Controversial recommendation, and this came from you. Residents feel there should be a restaurant down on the river at the city's Ace Sand Company location. That's just a request, a recommendation. That's another problem altogether, but it would be nice to have a nice restaurant in that location. They're so busy on the weekends. It's just, that whole corridor down there is just so busy and so high vibe and everything. It's just, a restaurant and some venues down there would probably be good. We would ask that there be some upgrades done to the Don White Park, that the East Roswell Park over here, the baseball fields be upgraded. There's a lot of muddy water standing in them quite a while. I know that's expensive, but, and that the Visitor Bureau, hotel tax, motel tax also be used to promote our parks and recreation, like I mentioned earlier. And that this East Roswell Center here be more optimized. I think it's a tremendous venue to bring community members together. Community events can be scheduled here, and I don't understand all the management aspects of this facility, but it's a wonderful facility right in the middle of East Roswell, and I would ask the city consider optimizing it significantly more than what I think it is right now, or what the committee thinks it is. Lastly, in conclusions, again, I want to thank Mayor and Council for the bold leadership they've offered to allow us to create this wish list and criticize some of what we experience every day on East Roswell. I really think it needs, and so do the studies, it needs work to be a vibrant economic sub-community of the city of Roswell. The problems that we have been repeatedly suggested and documented, again, for 15, 16 years, and even after the city annexed this area back in 1999. So it's time to do something about it. I recognize the reality of the financial obligations that would be necessary. It's not a small scale of improvement, but it is necessary to focus our economic development priorities on the east side more than we have experienced thus far. We need improvement, and the economy here is screaming for that improvement. So I conclude. I thank you very much for showing up tonight on such a miserable night. Again, our thoughts are with our committee member in Jamaica. And so, more so these kind of days than ever. And so I guess we move now to a question period. And again, I thank you very much for your tolerance. It's a long, TD numbers-driven presentation. We need to do something about our East Side economy. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you have comments that you would like to make, you can start to queue up over here. We'll take comments here at the microphone. You can drop your card here in the box next to me. We also have staff in the corner that if you're on your way out the door and you want to pass out or pass in the written comments, we can take those on your way out as well. I'll just set a quick 4-minute timer. We're going to try to keep everybody down to the 5 minutes, similar to our mayor and council meeting. I'll set a 4-minute timer, so if you hear that go off, that'll give you just the cue that you've got a 1 minute. It's just on my phone. We don't have a big flashing light or anything. So we were talking about the scoreboard, but it's pretty loud to buzz people, and I thought that would be rude. So come on up. And sorry, just introduce yourself with name and address, similar to a council meeting.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Singer. I live over in Woodfield, so I would have walked tonight had it not been raining. Thankfully we have sidewalks from there to here. So thank you so much for all of the research that you've done over the last year. Literally, I found myself nodding my head over and over and over again, which is great. Of course, disappointing to hear that many of these recommendations were brought up 20 years ago and still we're bringing them up again. So one question that I have regarding that is, many of your recommendations, is it solving for today's problems, or are you being visionary and saying, who are the residents going to be 15, 20 years from now? What are they going to want out of Roswell?
Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks. That's a pretty good question. That's a very good question. You know, float away. The reality is long-term needs to be addressed. I think we should have a full-scale planning process going on with the city that addresses with a higher priority the east side needs. I think we have an awful lot of catch-up to do. And I don't think you can go into the future that far unless you take care of some of the fundamental infrastructure problems that's a legacy here. We inherited this, you know. We bought here and inherited it. The city annexed it and inherited it. It's just a legacy of problems. And I think the most important thing first is to get some of the, I'm glad I'm inside. No, well, take as long as you want, right? But I think the most important thing, honestly, is let's clean up what we've got. And let's take our priorities, the Holcomb Bridge 400, the Centennial area, the Nesbitt Ferry area, the Holcomb Bridge corridor east of Old Alabama, and let's create some planning. Let's use the comprehensive planning process the city already has in place, which is mandated by the state, and it's, again, being revised. The revision is being begun, I think, in March of this month, actually, I think, it's beginning. So I think we need to jump into that and try to get some real priority for the east side. The problems have been documented, quantified, alternatives have been designed, roads have been designed, all kinds of things have been done. We just haven't transformed it into actionable strategies. Time for action is now. And you all have to be involved, and we all have to work together. The decisions are not easy. The finances are, and I am not intimately familiar with the city finances, but I think we have to bite the bullet in some way, because we can't continue with the east side economy the way it is and hope that all these businesses are going to be here and thrive. We just can't do it. You already have seen how many businesses are how much business is leaving. Look at the demographics of our economy here. The homes are valuable. Incomes per home is high. We have some of the best marketing statistics in consumer markets in North Fulton County. Yet we lose a lot of it to siphon off to other businesses in other areas, and that's a waste. We've got to do something about that, and it's large companies. We've got to be innovative in terms of economic development planning. So whatever we have to do, we just have to put our heads together and do it. You know, what we've been doing works a little bit, but we need more. At least on the east side, we need a lot more. So there's a tremendous imbalance, we need a priority.
Let me add, though, that relative to your question, I think as time goes on, I'm not going to say anything negative about what Trent just said. It's all, we got to bring ourselves up to the present. But I think going forward, at various times, it'll be needed to look at the new generations, Gen Z, Gen X, or Gen Z basically is what I'm talking about, and realize that there are different ways to do things. We did hit on the opportunity for WeWork or Roam or whatever, you know, that you can go down the street and have a place to hang your hat, basically. Yeah, or in your basement or something. But I do think that at some point in time, maybe many of us won't be sitting in the room at that point, but I think we have to continue to realize that times change, needs change, but if we can get ourselves up to the present, I think that's a great start.
One other point on short-term and long-term. I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, we did a lot of short-term immediate things, but probably the biggest thing is connecting East Roswell and West Roswell. And that's going to happen by the bridges. And that could take 5 to 10 years. So that is by far the biggest initiative that the council is doing and the mayor is doing. We're just kind of watching what's going on, but they've been very proactive with that. And one thing that we want to do too is make the bridges enhanced to look like a quality bridge, and they're talking about making it a pedestrian-friendly bridge and also a bicycle pedestrian bridge, so to connect the two cities. And then you could connect it to the city, to downtown, and that's what's going to connect the city. So we could sit here and beat our head against the wall until it's connected. You know, it's going to be baby steps until something big is done. Then it could revolutionize Roswell.
Hi, Jane Solofsky. I live in North Cliff along Riverside Road. I just have some quick practical recommendations for City Council, for the mayor, for your group. I am a 400 driver every day, every night. I'm disgusted by the panhandlers that I see every night. And I look to you guys to enforce it. I call all the time for somebody to come out and get these guys. I mean, I'm literally sitting there in my car and they're at my window. And that's our gateway to this city. It's really a shame. I see trash out there all the time. We need to hold our city to task. I don't know who's responsible for those on-ramps and off-ramps, but they're usually covered in trash. So I really beseech you to work on that before we, I get that there are all these things that we want to do, but we have to start with the basics. So we need to clean it up. We need to keep our merchants responsible for keeping their properties clean, their landscaping clean. Put some flowers out, put some pots of flowers out, clean your windows, the basic stuff. So that's all.
My name is Joe Finnegan. I live in Horseshoe Bend. It's probably more of a comment than a question. I'm a little disappointed in the meeting tonight. I thought it was a feel-good meeting, okay, not an economic meeting. We're here to talk about all the empty storefronts, okay, at least I am. I want to know what the city's doing to encourage businesses to not only come here, but stay here. I did a lot of business in the supermarket industry my working days. I know for a fact that Target leaving and Kohl's leaving, those kinds of companies just don't pull up and get out, right? They give the city plenty of time, plenty of notice it's going to happen. I don't know what the response was, but I can tell you that it was a possibility that we could have saved them. The citizenship doesn't know what effort was made, I can guarantee you that. In terms of attracting other businesses, I don't know what the city's doing in terms of economics, tax base, et cetera. All right, to me, that's what I came to hear this evening. All right, it was an economic council, not a feel-good. Bridges and street lamps and all that are feel-good in my mind. It's nice. It's a great place to live. I want to continue to live here. But the point is that in East Side, okay, I've heard several times from the committee saying the economic impact in terms of, well, I got to tell you something. The East Side of Roswell supported the West Side of Roswell for the last 30 years that I've been living here, okay, in terms of our tax money being spent on the other side of 400. It's time that the city take a look at us, consider our concerns, okay? The blight on Holcomb Bridge Road is there for all to see. I want to hear what is going to happen in terms of correcting the blight.
It's going to be a hard act to follow. My name is Larry Brown. I live in River Falls. I have some softball questions. One is, do we have the website? Did you give us the website where we can see this report and read the report? Was that out there somewhere? Okay, great.
I think it's in the handout. I think it's in the handout, yeah.
Sorry. Apropos streetlights and the Centennial Node, Eves Road, when you are going east to west on Holcomb Bridge and you turn into Eves Road at night, it is ridiculous. Perhaps you could consider one street light on the east side of Roswell and maybe put something over there so people have a chance of living another day. My other comment or query was you spoke of things that are actually in progress regarding exit 7. Are these things actually going to happen? Are they actually on the drawing boards and that there's some timetable where there's going to be improvements? And what is the status, if anything, about a MARTA station for Holcomb Bridge?
We're residents here too. So I don't know about the actionable timetable or the funding or anything else. What we've tried to do is, it may be feel good in some ways, but we've taken a good faith effort, put a lot of time into it to legitimize the type of recommendations that we've made. And what we're doing is kind of passing the buck, so to speak, to the city with what we feel as a community, at least from our perspective, what the community has said they want, what studies have said are legitimate over the years, that the east side needs. And I think we need to stay engaged in order to see how the city deals with developing policies to make these kind of changes, including your streetlight. You know, to be honest with you, we looked at it real hard in terms of sidewalks. We didn't consider streetlights on Fouts Road, but you're probably right. Yeah, I know you're right. But, you know, we have taken as a committee a first step, and I think it's a bold first step. And I don't disagree at all that we want action and priority. And that's what we're requesting, that in the text of the report quite specifically. But timetables, we don't have control over that. I think we all have in some ways control over that. We have a very energetic mayor and council. We have to look for them to create solutions to the problems that we've defined and to prioritize those problems to get action. And I think we have to remain engaged in one form or another as a citizenry to see that that's done. And I don't have a better answer for that right now.
Thank you.
I could say that we have seen some of the proposed information that the city and council have been working on, and that's our priority, and we will continue to get that information, and what we get, we will share.
What's left of Lance Holmes. I live down in Horseshoe Bend, and I'm retired. My wife and I like to walk and hike, and we go down to like the river walk down in, and it's just wonderful and a great place to walk. It goes right along the river. Then it's been developed, and I think Roswell's been wonderful in using that. The access to the like the Vickery Creek Park and the bridge over there and the Roswell Mill Park. We got people we know back in Lawrenceville that travel all the way across over here just to use those facilities. My question is that there's Girard Landing, I think that's owned by Roswell, and you go over there and there's a dirt road, and there's a little playground down there. It just seems to me that it's an underdeveloped area. I mean, access to the river like that is something that everybody wants and everybody wants to use. Seems like a wonderful place. You could develop, a boardwalk, something like the Riverwalk thing around there. I know it's tighter space. Parking's rough. But it seems like to me that that's some place that we could develop to attract people to come more to the area. Thank you.
That's a great point. And part of our recommendations originally was that whole area along Holcomb Bridge Road on the south side is good potential for like Class B office space or different types of development there that's low pressure. because it is such a great area and all that land is, I'm not an expert in that area, but it's a lot of available land. And I think those are good points. And you have a dirt road to the park, but you have a concrete path along the river down through there, I think. So it's I know. And it's good to hear people from outside the city are coming here to go to our parks and our river walks. That's why we need signs. Anyway, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dick Farmer. I live in Martin's Landing. Just a quick comment. This report that we saw this evening is very well done. Thank you very much. It's all about planning, action, and accountability, though. None of this is going to happen without those key elements in there. And one of the problems that Roswell has, and this is a legacy problem, we are saddled with an obsolete, good old boy developer-based development program where it's the quick buck for the apartment buildings as opposed to a comprehensive planning process for the city. It's time for the city now to have a good, effective city planning department, a development department. We've got some excellent city departments. We have, the template is there for how to run good departments within the city. We've already got some great departments. But a city development department is key. It provides the resources for the politicians, for the people who rotate through, who volunteer their time to represent us, but they need the resources at hand in a development department as opposed to just wandering around the city with holding the hands of an occasional developer. It doesn't work well, and as we see, what we're saddled with is an excess number of apartment buildings that are really have an economic life, a very short relative economic life. You look at some of the things that are going up, in 20 years they're going to be a disaster, and we've really got to change that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Chuck White. I live in Horseshoe Bend, and first of all, I want to thank y'all. I know you've put a lot of time and work and effort into what you've done. I want to thank everybody out here for all the tax money that you've paid to fund the plans and studies that we've had, we're referring to ones in 2005 and 2017, those are kind of old now. I mean, the way things are moving in our society, and please, I'm not saying for another plan or a study. I think we've had enough of those. But I just made a couple of notes here on some of the things I heard, and not in any particular order, but just kind of what I got out of it. And I agree with my good friend Joe back there on most of it. But what I wrote down is basically we're treating the symptoms of the disease. We're not treating the disease itself. The disease that we have here is a lack of economic development, pure, simple, bottom line. We don't have it. Everything and what you guys brought out, I think was good. Personally, I think a lot of it was cosmetic in nature, because if you don't have the pull to bring people in, then they're not going to stay just because of the cosmetics. They'll get tired of it and want to change that again in 2 years. So it has to be a base there of why people want to be here. That's one of the things. And as far as the shopping at Beaufort Farmers Market, I kind of asked some folks around in Horseshoe Bend and other places, and I don't know anybody that does that. Maybe they ask people on the east side of Spalding Drive, but I don't believe they ask people right around here. The other note I had, y'all said that the Horseshoe Bend, Old Alabama 400, that business quadrant there, has been recognized for decades for the business potential that it has. Why? I mean, why have we recognized something for 10 years and nothing is done about it? I go right back to the whole point. You got to have the basis there. And here's just an idea. I threw it out at one of the other meetings. Well, let me go ahead and get to the traffic first. Because the traffic there at Holcomb Bridge, 7A and 7B, that's just one of the most atrocious things I've ever seen in my life. Coming out there, if you're going east on Rock, if you try to look at the traffic coming east from the other direction, you're either going to break your neck or you're going to put it in a cast, because you can't look back. And because, I mean, it just backs the traffic up. And as soon as you can go through, bam, you're stopped because of all the traffic in front of you. I would suggest that if we're spending money, or the DOT is spending money, or whoever's going to spend this money, start looking at ways to get that traffic off from right there, the bridge, if you want to call it, because it just backs up every direction any time of the day. So just throw it out. Another thing I think that we need to do, or what you guys need, or whoever's doing this, is we need to look at what's happening in the world right now. As far as businesses are concerned, healthcare is one of the biggest issues facing our city, state, nation, and right now the world. Why not take some of that money and try to go and get, I mean, we can't do it at the Target now, because I guess that's going to be another 9,000 apartments or whatever's going there. That incidentally is not going to affect the traffic on Holcomb Bridge or the schools. That's what we were told. But to look at, and I've been doing a little research on it, did before I came over here. One of the things is go to Emory, get some, telemedicine is going to be huge in our country in the next few years, because people like me are getting older. A lot of things going on that can be handled. Why not try to entice some upstarts, have a place over there where Coles is or something, a center to bring in healthcare businesses for the future. Your Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, all that, that's where they are. Mortar and brick is really not going to bring them in now, because they're buying everything on Amazon. But if healthcare is going to be here. So thanks. I'm sorry I went over my time, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Dave Pendry. I live in the 12 Stones subdivision just across the street. And just wanted to start by saying thank you to the mayor and city council, as well as the committee. I know you guys put a lot of time and effort into the study, and I think there's a lot of great ideas there. In particular, the community center, that would be a huge improvement over additional high-density housing. So just wanted to applaud you guys for your creative thinking around that. And then just wanted to share a request in general, which is, you know, as we talk about the traffic and the blight up and down Holcomb Bridge Road, if there's anything that we can do to stop that in terms of the high density development, just within a quarter of a mile of where we're sitting here tonight, I think we're putting in 1,000 new home units, give or take, between Allstead, Enclave, Parkview, Target. We're flooding Holcomb Bridge with additional traffic and putting more and more pressure on our infrastructure, and it's making Holcomb Bridge, it's taking it in the opposite direction of horse fences and lighting and nice sidewalks and greenery. Part of East Roswell that was so attracted to us when we moved here 22 years ago was the green space. So all the woods up and down Holcomb Bridge Road were very, very attractive and made it pleasing to drive home at night. I work downtown. I don't mind the commute. I'm not sure that people mind leaving Roswell to go to work. The issue is packing more and more people into the space that we have. Let's really take every decision with a view towards this kind of a vision as we go forward. The car wash that went in, we're knocking down trees inside East Roswell Park. I mean, we need to plant more trees. We need to do more things to make it more green, and that's going to improve the quality of life for all the Roswell residents. That's what drives up home values and makes it attractive for people to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Walsh. I live in River Eves, right off of Eves Road. And first of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for recognizing the East Side people and having this come over here to be presented to the East Side people tonight. And thank you, gentlemen, for what you did. I think that's great. Secondly, though, I'd like to ask you that on page 4 of your recommendation, items 2 and 3, you talk about more supportive businesses being supported, being more proactive about going after businesses on the East Side. If I'm not mistaken, the city has been paying for an organization called Roswell Inc. for 4 years, for over, I don't know, somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million a year, and their job is supposed to go out and recruit businesses and bring businesses here. As far as I can see from any public or transparency, as some of our city council people have come on now talking about transparency, there is no transparency for Roswell Inc. to the taxpayers who pay for their money. I noticed that you talked about them in your organization, that there needed somebody like that. I also know that there was somebody on your committee from Roswell Inc. My question is, what was Roswell Inc.'s position on defining of new businesses, and why haven't there been more? Just since January, 6 businesses in the Holcomb Bridge corridor on the east side have either announced they're going out of business, or have announced that they're moving somewhere else, or have announced that if they don't find more property, they're leaving. And I know for a fact that they have not been talked to by anybody in the city or Roswell Inc. about finding out and helping them out of their situations. So we'll lose, and one of those has been here for over 30 years, and we're going to lose them. So I'd just like to hear your answer to that, and nicely request the city that somebody start taking an overview look at what Roswell Inc. does for their money, what these people are supposed to bring, what are their successes, what are their failures, what is their tactical plan for bringing up and having it be transparent to the citizens on this side especially. Thank you.
Thank you. Part of our committee, as a member of our committee, Roswell Inc. represented a lot of interests to us, especially in providing access to the RKG consulting group, who had done an awful lot of work in prior studies, economic studies that have a lot of relevance to what we're dealing with today, and contributed a lot of background to the committee from experiences and involvement that they have had over the years in terms of the evolution of economic development within the city. The areas of need that we have defined are clearly in excess of some of the work that's presently being done in economic development, and represents needs that we feel are still unmet. I'm not sure how the city deals with all of those needs, but there is a void in some areas of economic development, and the committee feels, and I personally feel, that there's a lot of needs to address that program area in some way. I can't criticize individual contractors or the performance of the city, but I can say that there are areas, as we have defined in the report, that need addressed and need solutions. And I think that we need to all work together to try to decide where the weaknesses are, where the lack of funding might be, or where the lack of staff resources might be, and deal with it constructively and move forward and get some results for the east side. And so we haven't looked at organizational aspects in that. We just looked at where the gaps are. And I think we've done a relatively decent job based on the resources we had and the reading material and so forth that we could use to quantify those problems. The problems exist. They have to be resolved. How we get it done is the challenge, I think. Thank you.
My name is Harry Emma. I live in River Terrace. I've got a comment, and then I've got a question from an audience member who asked me to ask the question, and then I have my own question. So my comment is that whenever I get together with neighbors and we start talking about where we live, we always talk about, did you notice that crop of trees that was just plowed down? And it breaks our heart to see all those trees go. I'm not saying you got to keep the trees and not develop. I'm just saying let's just keep that in mind, because one of the things that attracted us about moving to Roswell 20 years ago was how green it was, and to see the trees plowed down, especially where that corner of Eves Road and Holcomb Bridge where there's now nothing. So the question from the other audience member, and I'm not sure if this is more appropriate for the council or for you, is you mentioned in the study about developing the Coles property for a community center. What's happening with that property right now? Is it still owned by Coles, and is it just sitting there? Or is it something we own, or I don't know what's going on?
I'm not completely sure. I think it's still privately owned, but I'm not sure what the status of it right now in actuality.
Okay. So now my question, thank you for your work. I appreciate the work that was done on this, and I don't see so well, so I couldn't see all the things that were up on the wall. But my question was, at one point in the beginning, there was a map that showed that people were leaving Roswell. People who live here were leaving Roswell to go work somewhere else. And then later in the study, there was talk, or later in the discussion, there was talk about attracting businesses here so those people will stay here instead of going to other places to work. Where I got confused was, I see the beautification efforts, and I hear about what we want done at the intersection of 400 and Holcomb Bridge Road. But what about the rest of Holcomb Bridge Road? Even if those people didn't leave the city, they're still going to have to drive somewhere on Holcomb Bridge Road to get to where they would work here. So it's a terrible road. So I don't know, and I know you didn't, I don't think I saw a recommendation in there that said anything about widening it or anything that would help alleviate the traffic. So I'm assuming that it's based on people not leaving Roswell and staying here, that would improve that. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, or leave it for the council or whatever.
The gist of our recommendations and the findings would be more along the line that our residents do not favor shopping convenience or availability of different types of retail businesses in our present corridor, given its situation. And it appears that they're shopping for products and or services in other cities where they apparently work for convenience, or based on the fact that those businesses exist more convenient in those areas than they do in our area. For example, attorneys, financial planning, business services, a lot of medical services, which another person mentioned earlier. A lot of times people buy those services in areas that are more convenient to where they work, if they're not available where they work or at home. So I think that the design or the marketability of a lot of our east side businesses is not such that people desire or choose to shop those businesses. Even if it is something they want to buy, they use them for convenient shopping, but they prefer to do heavier shopping in other areas that are more convenient or more desirable for their shopping tastes, or the product offerings are better, or the service businesses. You'll find a lot more medical practices in other cities than sometimes you find here. And so businesses position themselves where they can get good business. And I think that if we dress up our Holcomb Bridge corridor, make it more appealing for everyone in every way, more accessible, and attract more businesses that actually provide services or products that people are consuming now. We can tell what they're consuming in other areas, or at least so far we can. And if we can match what they're buying versus available areas in the east side, we might be able to improve the aesthetics of the east side from a shoppability standpoint. We may very well make some significant progress. And so that would involve identifying certain types of companies, whether it's franchise or service business, childcare, all kinds of things that may be able to be attracted into this market. So we have strong market characteristics. We have some very well-to-do residents here, but we're just not getting the businesses to offer them what they want. You know, that's the problem we face. So you have to start someplace, and that's to upgrade the market conditions that we have to deal with so we can attract better businesses.
Okay, so I guess Holcomb Bridge Road, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with it, but I'm still thinking to myself, I'm still driving on Riverside Road, and there's still going to be people, I'm doing 35, and there's people on my bumper.
I
Because everybody's using that as a way to get off of Holcomb Bridge Road, so. Again, I appreciate the work that
There's no doubt about that, and we didn't recommend widening or anything because that's beyond our capabilities, and we have had no measures on volume and capabilities of the roadway, and that was, we figured we start with other things first.
Okay, well, thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thanks. If you want to grab this, just grab it.
Hi, I'm Joyce Cross. I live 2300 12 Stones Drive. I'm right down the street. I have a question. First of all, thanks to the volunteers. It's a lot of work you guys do, and you don't get much credit. So I know what that's about. So I just want to thank you and thank the city for having this. And then my other question is, I know the city of Atlanta, not that we're Atlanta, but the city of Atlanta, when they want to develop a particular blighted area, which is what I would consider East Holcomb Bridge Road, it's blighted. It looks awful. They have empowerment zones, and the city actually puts together like a fund, some money that they give these businesses to encourage them to come to a particular area and set up shop there. I was wondering if that's a consideration. Maybe some of the money we're spending in other areas like Roswell Inc. or something might be better well spent in an empowerment zone type of thing. And then I have just one other comment, and I'll shut up. The Buford Farmers Market, I've lived here like 25 years. I've never been there. I don't know what they're talking about. And if it's such a great place that I'm missing, which I tried to even look it up on my phone, and it said it was in Doraville somewhere. I'm like, what? You know, if it's so great, why don't we have a farmer's market on the east side of Roswell? I mean, East Roswell Park, you could use that parking lot right there, and on Saturdays or whatever, when there's no games or what have you, we could set up our own farmer's market, and that would attract a whole bunch of people. So, yeah, I mean, I love farmer's markets. So, you know, that's why I was very like, what? So anyhow, those are my comments. Thank you.
Joyce, let me follow up on that. Just to clarify something, the farmer's market was not from a survey. It was from the one company within that thing that does cell phones trackers. So it wasn't a search, just so you know, it was actually from data from a cell phone. And the other thing is there are some empowerment zones over by 400 and Holcomb Bridge. That's a state tax credit. So there actually is in place, and Roswell Inc. promotes it all the time, and several people that I know have actually signed up for it. So there is, we can get you that information. I can't think of the website, but well, it's the city promotes it with the state. You do it with the state, and it's a tax state credit from your tax. But a lot of people don't know about it.
Hey, my name is Jason Sabatino, and I live over in Horseshoe Bend, and I'm close enough to walk here, so I appreciate all your work to try and get us some sidewalks and things that we can do. I've actually, when I was on the North Fulton Comprehensive Transportation Plan Subcommittee with a few of our folks here, that was one of the things that I tried to get prioritized in East Roswell were the sidewalks, so definitely something we need. I really appreciate all the volunteer work that's gone into this, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the folks that are sitting in this front row right now. So we have 6 council members here and a mayor. And I'm a little bit shocked after being in East Roswell now for over 20 years that we have had, this is at least the fourth or fifth pretty sizable meeting in East Roswell regarding economic development and status of things. We, continue to, we've shown out, we've elected people that have said that they're going to work with us and help us in East Roswell. So my question is, what else do we need to do in order to see action? Because, for 20 years, I've been hearing about we need to improve this, we need to improve that. And some of us in the room have been here more than 20 years and seen it and asked for it. But we just keep repeating ourselves over and over again, expecting a different result. And that, to me, is the definition of insanity, or at least that's how it's been taught to me over the years. So how do we empower you on council and mayor to take the resources of the city and actually do something? And not give us lip service or tell us, when I run again in 2 years, I'm going to do something then. Because it's not happening. I'm also a little bit disappointed on some things I didn't hear about tonight. And one of those is the redevelopment that we learned about recently because of TJ's restaurant, that Ramco is looking to redevelop Holcomb Center. And I didn't hear anything from anybody about Holcomb Center and that redevelopment. So it makes me wonder, not that this is new development, I understand, right? I mean, it was not in the scope, I think, of when you were doing your investigation, but what is the city doing about Holcomb Center? Are we involved in that? Do we even know about it? I don't ever see or hear anything about Roswell Inc. I subscribe to the newsletters, I pay attention to their information online. I don't ever hear or see anything over here in East Roswell. I take that back. I did see a note the other day about Kimberly-Clark turning some of or repurposing some of their campus into an office park, which is great. But how do we get things going over here? The other thing I thought that was, interesting is we keep talking about the studies show this, the studies show that. Our volunteers have gone out and verified every single thing that the studies have said, essentially, right? So why is it then that when we have the opportunity for a redevelopment to occur at, say, East Village, do we allow conditional uses and other things to pander or cater to the developer that wants to have these conditional uses that take away the commercial opportunities that could possibly exist, replace them with residential, and then complain that we don't have any commercial, when all we're doing is adding more residential? It makes no sense at all. And I don't care what we write out on our Facebook pages or in our community newsletters or what have you, it makes no sense at all. The way that we're going to get this solved, in my opinion, and I've said this to a lot of people and it's been said here tonight, is we need to get economic development in-house. All of our neighbors are doing it, they're eating our lunch. We don't have, we're on this, we do all these studies, but we end up at the end of the day going nowhere. It's like the Walking Dead, these zombies walking around in circles stewing. Seriously. I'm laughing too about it because it's like, they film it here in Atlanta, they could film it over at East Village. Bring the movie industry in. So I'll just wrap it up with saying this. There's a couple of things that our council can do as they're looking through this moratorium. And one of those is to take a note from some of our neighbors. And let's look at things, when you look at the conditional uses, why don't we put a limit on the conditional uses and say, look, if we give you a conditional use and you don't act upon it in a certain period of time, guess what? It expires.
because the times change. It's not 5 years ago or 10 years ago. There's properties all over Roswell that we are limited in what we can and can't do because of zoning decisions that were made years ago. And had those conditional uses and possibly other things been looked at back then and they had expired, we might have other new and better opportunities for us today. And I'm gonna call just a real quick BS a little bit on the Amazon argument. Because if you look at Amazon today, they account for 5% of retail business in the United States. 5% is what they service. The other 95% are serviced by the Macy's, the Nordstroms, and what have you, but guess what? An even higher percentage is serviced by our local businesses, and we need more of them in East Roswell. Thank you very much.
Are there any additional questions? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. Please come forward. Thank you.
I'm just Heather Pendry, 12 Stones. I'm just trying to find out. I thought I was coming tonight to hear about the Coles property, and I'm trying to figure out, do we know what's going on and it's just not public knowledge? Or do we really not know what's going on?
I can tell you what I know, and that is there is no activity there whatsoever. Period. No one has come into the city, no one is doing due diligence, no one is coming forward at all. So it's just crickets. I know council will be here if anybody is not comfortable about speaking in public. And we've got the comment cards that you can submit to us, but also we'll be here. And thank you all so much for coming out. And I would like to thank the committee again. Let's give them a round of applause.